Hey guys, it's Lucky Ghost here, and today we're going to be talking about a Fire Staff and Ice Gauntlet build. This thing hits so hard. It's got great crowd control, great damage, and fantastic mobility, making it amazing for both PvE and PvP. The Ice Gauntlet is really fun to use, and the damage that the Fire Staff puts out is insane. So let's dive into it. Let's see how this thing ticks. I'll tell you which abilities we're going to use and why, as well as which passives we're going to grab to complement them. I'm also going to go ahead and show you some footage of the build in action so that you can see how it plays and talk about that a little bit, explain the order that we're going to use abilities and why. So without further ado, let's jump into this. All right, first let's talk about the Fire Staff. For the Fire Staff, we're going to be using Pillar of Fire, Fireball, and Burnout. Pillar of Fire does a ton of damage, and because of the First Strike passive, it's going to do 40% more damage if we're hitting something with full health. So we're going to start off with this ability, right? That's going to do big things for us. It's going to do big damage, and it won't be uncommon for you to straight up one-shot things because of this. Next, we have Arson's Advantage. Gain 10% of your max mana per enemy hit. This is a massive passive. This thing is amazing. So a lot of times you're going to find yourself grouping up 2, 3, 4 enemies to kind of AoE them down. And when you do, you're going to hit them with this ability, which is going to give you 10 mana back per enemy hit. The ability only costs 15 mana. So if you've got 2 or more enemies, you actually gained mana for casting this ability rather than losing it. And sometimes you're gaining 2 or 3 times the mana that you spent, which is fantastic for your sustained. I mean, it makes it impossible to run out if you're effectively hitting things with this ability. The next ability we're going to be grabbing, Fireball here, fires off a fireball that deals 140% weapon damage on impact and leaves a 3-meter burning field that lasts 6 seconds. The burning field deals 10% weapon damage each second. So basically what this is saying is it hits the ground and explodes, hurting everything around it and leaving a burning field on the ground. So if something is in that or walks through that burning field, it's going to grab this dot that does 10% damage for the 6 seconds, right? It's a nice solid dot. You'll definitely see it when the enemy's got the dot on them. And if you aim this thing at or around the enemy's feet, it's really hard to miss them. But if you manage to hit their body, there is a benefit to that because of one of the passives we'll talk about here in a second. Scorched Earth passive is going to make that dot on the floor last 9 seconds, so giving you more time to get the enemy to run through it and more time for it to tick their life down. Catch. This passive is the one that kind of encourages you to nail the enemy right in the chest or the face or the feet. As long as it's a direct hit, it gives you 10% of your mana back. That's going to be 10 mana and reduces the Fire Staff cooldowns by 7%. So 7%, not massive. And the 10 mana you're getting back is not huge. I mean, it's something, it's almost 50% of the cost of the ability. So it is nice. It does really help with sustain. But if you hit the ground instead of the enemy, you know, not the biggest deal in the world. You're not losing all that much. And then as for Burnout, this is going to be a great ability for not only mobility, but also doing damage. It does good damage. When you go through something, they will feel it, I promise you. And it's going to put a nice dot on them that lasts for 8 seconds, dealing 10% of your weapon damage for 8 seconds. It's a very nice dot. It's a very nice damage ability, and it's great for mobility. You're also going to grab All In, which is going to reduce all of your Fire Staff cooldowns by 5% for each enemy that you go through when you use this mobility ability. So if you can set it up so that you're traveling through 3 or 4 enemies, which very often you will, that's going to be great for your cooldowns. And next, Heat It Up. You're going to grab this passive for sure. This is going to make the ability travel 50% farther. It's huge. You definitely want this one. I've pulled out of it for increased damage because of some of the content I was doing right now. I really didn't need the range on it, but if you find yourself doing a lot of small scale PvP, this is a really essential passive. Grab it sooner than later anytime you're going to be jumping into PvP, as it's really going to help you put distance between you and the enemy so that you can turn around and start unleashing your Ice Staff on them to slow them down and then blow them up with your Fire Staff. As for the passives, we unlock after we get our abilities and their passives, right? So then what are we going to do? We're going to also grab Singe. This is going to put a fire dot on the enemy anytime we get a critical hit on them. It's going to be 3% of our weapon damage each second for 6 seconds. So it's a nice dot. It adds up, and the enemy's definitely going to feel this. Clear Casting. If you haven't taken damage in 3 seconds, you do 10% more damage. This pairs really well with First Strike. Our first attack does 40% more damage to an enemy that's at full health, right? So if we lead off with them, that right there is 10% more damage, 40% more damage. Then we've also got Clear Mind, which is going to give us 10% in power, which increases our damage when we are above 50% mana. Highly encourage you to grab this one as well, right? And so then all of that, that's a ton of extra damage. You've got 40%, 10%, right? 10% in power. lots and lots of extra damage coming in from this staff, from these passives. Then we have Spell Slinger. Your abilities gain an extra 15% chance to critical strike. This is huge. You definitely want this. More chance to critical is always good. And then this pairs with that very nicely. Prophet of a Fire God. While holding a fire staff, your crit strike damage is increased by 20%. So we're 15% more likely to crit. And then when we do, it does 20% more damage. You're also going to grab gear that gives you crit chance and things like that too. But it's nice to get 15% right here from one single passive. That's really powerful. On this side, we're going to take Pyromania. While holding a fire staff and below 50% max health, our damage is going to be increased by 20%. We're taking this simply to unlock the next row so that we can get down to burnout, right? But it is nice that we're doing extra damage when our health is low. And then we've got Let It Burn. Whenever burn deals damage, gain 10% fortify for 2 seconds. This is nice. You're definitely going to want to take advantage of that. We're going to constantly be burning enemies, which means we're constantly going to get fortify, reducing our damage taken. And because we are a glass cannon build, anytime we can find a way to take less damage, it's really going to help. After you grab Let It Burn, we're going to grab Kindle, which is going to let our burning last 20% longer. So we are going to grab Watch It Burn, which is going to cause our light attacks to put a fire dot on the enemy. And then we're also going to grab Combat Speed. Whenever we activate a fire staff ability, we gain 10% haste. So the ones that I don't have that we're going to grab are going to be the Heated Up. We're going to grab that sooner than later. We're going to grab Watch It Burn, Combat Speed, and Clear Mind. All right, now let's talk about the Ice Gauntlet. Not only is the Ice Gauntlet great for crowd control, don't underestimate its damage. This weapon hits so hard. I mean, even the light and the heavy attack, they really have a sizable impact on the enemy. And this Ice Storm, which is going to be a great crowd control ability, is also going to do a ton of damage. I mean, when people get stuck inside of this, people and NPCs, their health is going to plummet because it's also going to debuff them because of some of our passives, which means they take even more damage from this ability and all the other things that we're doing to them while they're in there. So the first ability we're taking is Ice Storm. This is a ranged attack that deals 17% weapon damage every 0.25 seconds and slows enemies within a 5-meter radius. 25% slow, 20-meter range, and 5-second duration. So it lasts for 5 seconds. It slows them by 25%, right? While doing great damage. We are going to grab Weakening Guts, which says incoming damage is increased by 10% for 3 seconds to enemies in this Ice Storm if they're below 50% health. Once they're below 50% health, they're going to start taking 10% more damage because of this. Storm Summoner says that Ice Storm mana cost is decreased by 80% at full mana. So if I cast this ability when I'm at full mana, the cost of this ability is reduced by 80%. So this is another ability you can lead with if you feel like you would rather start with the crowd control and the sustain. You can reduce the cost of this ability by 80% if you're at full mana. Next, we have Punishing Storm. Increases our damage done by 10% for each enemy in Ice Storm. So the more enemies that you get in there, the more damage you're doing. You have 4 enemies in there, you're doing 40% more damage with this ability. That is massive. So that's another ability that's really encouraging you to round up enemies, then drop these abilities, right? Because this one is doing more damage based on the number of enemies that are in there. And then your Pillar of Fire is giving you more mana back based on the number of enemies that are in there. We're also going to be taking Ice Shower for PvP. This is less useful in PvE, but it's great for getting melee characters off of you. If you've got someone coming at you with a hatchet or rapier and you need to get them off of you so that you can turn around and unload on them, just throw this down, run through it. They have to make a choice. Do they want to head through it? If they try to go through this ability, right? If they try to go through this, what's gonna happen is they're gonna get frozen for 1 second, and then they're gonna be slowed after that for 3 seconds, and they're not gonna be able to run for that 3 seconds. It's great for creating a gap between you and them, and more often than not, it's gonna make the enemy stop in their tracks and allowing you to just deal damage to them, right? Because they don't know, do I want to go through it or do I want to go around it? And whatever they choose, it's kind of a bad option for them. Now, because it's not doing really damage, right? Unless you have some kind of piece of gear that causes it to do damage, and those do exist, right? But really, it's not doing damage. So if you want to do specifically PvE, if you're gonna have a PvE focus and you're not really worried about getting gaps from players, you could also take Ice Spikes instead and take these passives that are associated with making this ability more impactful and do more damage. But if you are going to be doing a lot of PvP, I really recommend Ice Shower. And finally, Entombed. It doesn't matter if you're PvPing or PvEing, you want this ability. It's going to encase you in ice, which is going to prevent you from taking damage, right? It's also going to restore your mana to full. While you're in here, your mana will start going up really fast. And eventually, you'll break out of it, right? You can choose to right click and break out and nothing happens, or you could left click and explode, causing everything around you to get knocked back and take a significant amount of damage. So it's a nice little damage ability as well. It does cost 20 mana to explode. So, you know, that's 1/5 of your mana. Whether or not you want to do that is really kind of up to you, but it can be a nice source of extra damage if you want it to be. The main thing that we're going to use it for is for the damage immunity and for the completely restoring our mana back to full whenever we want. Okay, so as for the passives that we're going to be grabbing, these passives to me are kind of underwhelming. That are associated with Ice Shower. You get increased Ice Shower duration to 7 seconds. Either the enemy's going to run through it in the first 4 seconds, or they're going to run around it. Very rarely would a extra 3 seconds of it sitting there do anything, because they've already made their decision to go around or to go through it, right? So I don't see this being terribly useful a lot of the time. Next, we have Quick Shower. So anytime you run through this, you get 25% speed boost for 2 seconds when entering the Ice Shower. So, you know, in small scale PvP, like 1v1 or something, this could be useful. You know, you put it in front of you, you run through it, you get a 25% speed boost, which is a nice speed boost, but it's only for 2 seconds. Meanwhile, the enemies had to stop, go through it, or go around it, right? So that could be useful, but at the same time, I've chosen to grab some damage passives instead. And then finally, this one here is kind of useful. Frostbite applies Rend to the target, reducing their defenses by 10%. A 10% reduction in their defenses is not bad. But I'm focusing damage more. That's what I've elected to do, so that I can do more damage in PvP and PvE. So we're going to be taking Cold Reach, which is going to increase the damage of our light and heavy attacks by 15% if a target is further than 15 meters away. We're going to grab Critical Rejuvenation, recover 15 mana after triggering a critical hit on a target. Nice. Gathering Storm, hit an enemy with 3 consecutive light attacks to grant the player 15 mana. That's nice. We're going to take Critical Frost, increasing our critical chance if hitting an enemy in a frosted area or with Frostbite by 20%. So this is the 20% increased chance to crit. That's massive. You will see yourself critting a lot. Once an enemy is in a frosted area, such as our Ice Storm, you're going to do massive damage to people that find themselves inside of your Ice Storm. Not only that, Heavy Freeze. Heavy attacking will freeze the target if they're in the Ice Storm or with Frostbite for 1 second. So if they're in here, right, you've got maybe a ranged person or another mage in there, heavy attack them. That's going to freeze them for 1 second while they're in there. If they're melee, you can keep unloading on them with just about anything, or you could throw a heavy attack. It's a free attack. They're going to be frozen, and you're going to need to hit them again. And then next, Ultimate Shield. Definitely grab this when you can. Ice abilities, chill targets, increasing your ice damage by 35% for 3 seconds. That's a huge boost to your damage. You definitely want it. Anytime you can increase your damage by that much, grab it, right? And then over here, we have increased our speed by 10% in a frosted area. We're taking this mostly because we want to unlock these abilities, and you can't get to this row without putting a point somewhere in this row. So 10% movement speed inside of our Ice Storm. Well, that's nice. You can kite people in a circle in there, and you'll find yourself doing that quite often, actually. Then we're going to grab Refreshing Frost, reduce all active cooldowns for ice abilities by 20% when casting an ability in a frosted area. So any abilities that you cast inside of here are going to reduce the cooldowns of all of these abilities by 20%. That's a significant cooldown reduction, and it's nice to have. And then we're going to grab Defiant Freeze. Casting an ice ability creates an ice hardened layer, granting 20% fortify for 2 seconds. 20% fortify is significant. You will mostly take damage when you're stopping to cast abilities, so this pairs really perfectly with that. Hey, you're casting an ability, you get 20% fortify for the 2 seconds following that, which is usually when you get hit. And then we're going to take Strength Entomb, increase your defense by 25% for 3 seconds after breaking out of Entombed, right? Usually if you're entombed, enemies are standing around you wailing on the tomb, trying to break it, and you're going to have to come out eventually. When you do, this will be making you take, 25% less damage. That's great. Then you've got Cleansing Tomb. This is going to cleanse all debuffs when you are entombed. Really nice to have. All right, as for our attributes, what we're going to do is put all of our points into intelligence until we fill that sucker up. After we do, we'll start putting points into constitution for extra health. In the meantime, what we want to do is get as much intelligence as possible. This is going to unlock really handy passives for us, such as 10% increased damage to light and heavy attacks, 10% critical damage, 15% elemental damage, 10 mana after a dodge, and 30% duration to damage over time spells. And last but not least, 30% increased damage to first hit on a full health target. So the first spell that we cast on a full health target is going to hit 30% harder. That pairs really well with Pillar, which is already being buffed. It does 40% more damage if it's a first hit. That means that spell is going to be massive in the amount of damage that it puts out. If we get the jump on someone or something, it's going to hurt. So yeah, put all your points into intelligence. Then go ahead and start dumping them into Constitution for the extra health. You could put a few points into Constitution early if you'd like to unlock the all health consumables, get 20% stronger node. However, this is going to happen naturally. I have enough constitution to unlock that passive without even putting a single point into that. Just because some of my gear has constitution on it, it got me there, right? So your gear is going to have intelligence on it. Your gear is going to have constitution on it. And for that reason, you're going to unlock these passives a lot sooner than you would otherwise get them just by putting your attributes in manually, right? If you hover over this, you can see I'm getting 162 points from my attributes, then 13 from my equipment, and 95 from my item buffs. And then down here on constitution, I got the 5 points, just the 5 that you start with, 7 from equipment, and 45 from item buffs. So the same thing will happen for you. Go ahead and pump intelligence pretty much primarily until you fill that sucker up, and you'll get the constitution. It'll come, and then when this is full, you can start pumping constitution. Now let me show you how this build kind of operates. Here we can see that there's a guy. So we're going to start off with our ability that does 40% more damage when he's at full health. Boom. We'll follow up with a fireball, and he's toast, right? Nice, easy. He's made of wood, so he does take extra damage from fire. That's nice. Let's show you this, just to kind of demonstrate how a melee fight might work. So we could throw down this ability here. That's going to slow him. It's going to make him really easy to hit with pretty much everything else. And to dodge their incoming attacks, we can go through them with this, get a gap, and then kind of unload on them. And then we can even throw this down, right? And should they try to come through it, they'll get froze for 1 second like that, and we can just smack them. Remember that the more enemies that you can get into this ability here, the more damage you're doing to all of them. The damage goes up by 10% for each enemy inside. So grouping them up and knocking them down really pays off, especially because this ability, your Pillar of Fire, right, gives you 10 mana back for each enemy that you hit with it. So you'll get a bunch of enemies in it, run them around inside, and then lay down your Pillar of Fire. Follow that up with a nice orb, right? That's going to throw a fire dot on the ground right there. That's going to cause fire damage to any of them. It's going to catch them on fire if they walk through that, right? And then you can blast through them. Boom. Hitting all of them yet again and throwing another dot on the enemies. Okay. So you are doing a lot of damage to your enemies. You've got, let's see, the dot from this ability here. You've got the dot from this ability here, right? Your orb. And then you've also got the dot from your mobility skill, right? All of that throwing dots onto the enemy. They're kind of just melting. And then you've got this massive direct damage that you can use at any time here to kind of hit them if you want, right? And then just kind of sidestep their attacks. They'll never even touch you, right? Easy. When they're going that slow, it's pretty easy to dodge their attacks and to read what they're going to do next, because they're not going to have a lot of options. As for your gear, you're going to want to grab anything that has intelligence on it. And if it has con as well for the extra HP and associated nodes, all the better, right? But primarily, we're going to be glass cannon. We want to do as much damage as possible when we are doing damage. We want to slow things, keep them off of us, and then turn around and just hit them like a truck, right? And that's all there is to a fire staff and ice gauntlet build. I hope you understand it a lot better than you did before you watched the video. If you found this video helpful, be sure to like and subscribe for more content about New Worlds. I'll be putting it out regularly. If you ever want to hang out with someone else who loves New World, be sure to swing by my stream. I'll be running this build and many others over there through a ton of PVE and PVP content. That'll be over at twitch.tv/luckyghost. Either way, I'll see you in the next video and have a fantastic day.